Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
This Confederate flag was found on an Orange County firefighter's axe. Now, major changes are coming to that fire station because of it.
To me, they have a responsibility towards the citizens we serve.
We first told you last October about the investigation into that Confederate flag.
Another firefighter spotted the racially charged symbol as crews fought a fire at a Pine Hills home. It came from a firefighter at station number 42, which is in Pine Hills. Only Channel 9's Kathy Belch got a copy of the investigation into this. And Kathy, a firefighter from another station noticed the flag and said something.
That's right. The report says the African-American man who lived in this house at the time was already upset because his house was on fire. So the African-American fire lieutenant who saw the axe with the rebel flag painted on lying right here in the yard told a supervisor about it right away and got it out of here before the homeowners saw it. This is how the axe looked the night last July when it was first reported. Orange County's professional standards report says the battalion chief took action immediately. Within days, the son of Assistant Fire Chief Jeff Holton, who often speaks for the department, admitted he did it. Firefighter Jonathan Holton said it was a touch-up to the axe at Station 42 in Pine Hills that to him signified his small-town core values of family and hard work. He denied being racist or intending to offend anyone. The county calls it startling that other firefighters at Station 42, including supervisors who were to do regular equipment checks, denied ever seeing the rebel flag.
Either they knew and did nothing, or they should have known and come forward and stopped it. And that's the expectation I have of all my officers.
Orange County Fire Chief Otto Droz told us the case has exposed a culture of entitlement at his busiest fire station. Starting tomorrow, he's breaking it up. More than half the staff is being transferred. 2 African-American firefighters said if they had seen the rebel flag on the axe, it would have rubbed them the wrong way. Otis Turner lives across the street from the house that burned. He told us how he would have felt if he had seen this in his yard when his house was on fire.
I'd tell him to go bring me a star and stripe, stars and stripe flag, and then come back and put the fire out.
Now, Turner told me he is satisfied with what the county fire chief has done about this. Chief Drost has already started yearly diversity training. He says he'll consider diversity backgrounds when he's considering promotions, and he has increased the penalty for defacing fire department property with unauthorized symbols. Reporting live in Pine Hills in Orange County, Kathy Bellich, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Now, we asked our Facebook fans if they think this firefighter should be punished, and many have come out in his defense. What do you think? Join the conversation happening right now on Facebook.com/WFTV.
Context of White Supremacy. Justice Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of racism, white supremacy. Today's date, Wednesday, January 15th, 2014. So I have been told the web problem should be corrected. You should be able to access the program online. So for anyone who dialed in to listen to the program, if you would prefer, if you either dialed in and don't want to use all of your minutes, or if you are incurring charges to dial in to listen to the program, the web page should be functional. Just refresh the page and press the play button. I think that was confusing a few folks with the updates to the web page and everything. I think for the old player, it would just start playing automatically on the page. Just press the play button. The way the play button has looked on whatever device you use to listen to music or audio for the last how many ever decades, press the little triangle on the player, the media player, and you should hear the program. If you want to listen on the normal web page, I think that was throwing some people off. So problem should be corrected. And if you're listening on the phone line and you just want to stay there, that is fine too. Thanks for your patience. Starting a little bit late, but hopefully we'll still have constructive information to share for our listeners. We will be back tomorrow. We should have Dr. Brenda Juarez. She was mentioned on last week's program. She is a white woman. Always enjoy speaking with white folks about the problem. Racism, white supremacy, listener supported. Counter-Racist Radio. Invest if you think the program is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Our guest for today's program, I think our caller down in the Florida area. He's participated many times on our Saturday compensatory call-in, and we've talked about workplace racism, some of the problems that are presented, dealing with racism on the job. And one of the books that he has mentioned pretty consistently has been Fighting More Than Fires, Memoirs of Charles U. Phillips, talking about his time as a member of the Miami-Dade County Fire Department down in southern Florida, saying that it has just a lot of great information with someone talking about their experience, nearly 3 full decades working with the fire department, things that they went through both in the training and recruitment process, and even as they stayed on, and as he became the first black chief of the fire department in Dade County, which I am told is one of the largest fire departments in the country. Okay, make sure that folks are picking us up on the phone line. Okay, just making sure everyone is picking up the audio for the broadcast. Okay.
Unmuted.
All right, making sure they're picking up our audio for the broadcast. Once again, Context of White Supremacy, Justice Gus T Renegade, in for another broadcast, Wednesday, January 15th, 2014. The program today, our caller in Florida has referenced this book many times on our Saturday programs when we talk about racism in the workplace. The book, Fighting More Than Fires, Memoirs of Charles U. Phillips, detailing his 3-decade experience with the Miami-Dade County Fire Department, the first black chief of the fire department in Dade County, which I am told is one of the largest fire departments in the country. Thought it would be great to have him on the program, both to get his views on racism, as well as racism in the workplace specifically, difficulties that we've been talking about really for a while, just becoming more intense over the last couple of weeks, but we've been talking about this for, I would say, months now, specifically hearing someone who was in a position of being a supervisor and specific problems that they had as a result of that, and just dealing with racism from that position. Really appreciate him being on the program, being patient as we navigate through some of the tech issues that we had the misfortune of dealing with this evening. Joining us live from Florida, our guest, Dr. Charles U. Phillips. Dr. Phillips, are you with us, sir?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. Thank you for sharing a bit of your Wednesday evening with us. For folks, this might be their first time hearing about you and your book. For people, if they would like more information, you can visit the website charlesuphillips.com. Again, no strange spellings, just his name, charlesuphillips.com for more information, and if you want to get a copy of the book. Before we begin with the discussion, anything that you think our listeners should know about you before we get into the details of the book and what you've experienced?
Well, I started department with the Miami-Dade Fire Department. It was Metro-Dade at the time in 1974. I was a member of Class 28, which was the first predominantly African-American class through the Miami-Dade Fire Department. It took a court order to force Miami-Dade and other departments in Florida, and specifically Miami-Dade in 1970 to hire African Americans and other minorities. When I came on, after they started hiring blacks, I think I was number 9 or 10th on the department. The department took a sort of aggressive attitude as far as hiring minorities, not because they wanted to, because they were forced to by the courts. And one thing I want to mention, when that broadcast a few minutes ago about the rebel Confederate axe with the Confederate flag on it, and the firefighter talked about, well, he wasn't racist, that was his culture. That's exactly what it is. It's culture of enslavement of African American people. And that's something that we've been fighting for many years, to change that culture, because that culture is racism. And I'm not saying everybody on the department is racist. That's not what I'm saying. But it's a culture that accepted that and ignored that. Do you think those supervisors actually did not know that acts, and those things were the current thing? They looked the other way, and that's the problem. Too many people are looking the other way. And even, we as a people are guilty of that, looking the other way, because we don't want to cause any problems, don't want to jeopardize our job. And, sometimes we just have to stand up for what we believe in. That's what the civil rights workers did in the 1960s. In spite of the harm and brutality that they had to endure, they stood up. And we need to do that more. We need to encourage our young people not to laugh at it, call the same names they're calling us, and think that is a joke. It is not a joke. They're taking us for a joke because we're not standing up for our rights.
Well said. For folks who were listening in, that audio clip that played at the beginning of the broadcast, that was not from the 1970s, that was not from the 1960s, that was from 2014, just happened recently, in Orlando, no less, not quite your area, but pretty close, where they were saying that this white guy had a Confederate flag on his axe when they went to attend to a fire of a black resident in the Orlando area. And just your comments, I thought, hitting the nail right on the head. I think we've heard that many times on this program before about that. That is the culture. Racism, white supremacy is the culture, and that has been in place for a long, long time. So great way to begin the broadcast. This program, Context of White Supremacy, I use the terms racism and white supremacy as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. The definition I use for both is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that is an accurate definition?
Yeah. And I think most people realize that. That's why we won't have a serious discussion about racism, and how it affects minorities. People don't want to, they tend to shy away for those tough questions, because I think if we truly have a dialogue, and constructive dialogue, we may try to solve the problem. But I don't think it's that much enthusiasm in discussing those issues.
I could not agree more, Dr. Phillips. Could not agree more. No enthusiasm for jumping up to talk honestly about racism, white supremacy. Exactly what you said, turning away. We do not want to have truthful dialogue about that. That's, I think, what your book is all about. Again, folks can go to the website to get the book or to learn more information, charlesuphillips.com, and that book, Fighting More Than Fires, Memoirs of Charles U. Phillips. What was your purpose in putting this book together? What has been the response thus far?
So far the response has been very good, and, my thing is to try to get more exposure to the book. The book is a history lesson, and that's one thing I stress. I try to tell people that this book is not about hating white people. It's not about that. It tells about the struggles of African American people, and it's a bio, so it talks about what defined me as an individual, what controlled my thoughts as I grew up from humble beginnings, and how to overcome certain things. I want this book to inspire readers to achieve their own unreachable goal. And I look at it as an American story. And, if a child that came from humble beginnings and raised in the inner city, worked hard and became the fire chief of the 6th largest fire department, and also Miami-Dade at one point was considered the premier fire department in the world. We were one of 2 fire departments that responded all over the world. Russia, Central America, Africa, so the reputation was built for Miami-Dade Fire Department as the premier fire department in the world. So I was proud to be, the leader of that department. But the book is an in-depth, and it talks about the struggles of African American firefighters being integrated in this country and why it has been so difficult. It talks more what we discussed earlier, the culture. It's a culture system. In the beginning, firefighters was, they looked at it as something for Italian and Irish white males, and because we live in that fire station 24 hours a day, they felt we were invading their home. So that was very difficult to overcome, that culture, and especially with no one had the heart, I'm talking about the politicians, to integrate it because they didn't want to. And that's why it took the court system to forcefully, force them to bring the African Americans and other minorities to the department, into department. So I'm proud of the book because I think, once people, actually read the book, they will get an insight because it's not about just the racism, it's about the things that we do to each other. A lot of things they couldn't do to us unless we allowed them to do it, or we had our own fellow African-American politicians looking the other way, not being forceful in stopping the abuse and discrimination within the department itself. So it talks about a lot of that. And it also talks about the crab and barrel mentality, where sometimes we're not proud of each other's success. And it is important for black people to understand their history. And years ago, when my mother set me down, I called myself a little angry kid growing up because I used to watch the civil rights, marchers being stood on and the police officers, let loose their dogs on the marchers. And I used to wonder, why are you not fighting back, until my mother set me down. And she told me that those people showed great courage because what they're doing was they were sacrificing themselves in order that I would have a better future. And, as a about 12, 13-year-old kid, that was something strong information. And from then on, I became a history buff. And I made it my commitment, to be grateful and to make sure I'm in position to lift someone else up, because I'm truly standing on the shoulders of those marchers. And just like most of African American people, they sacrifice. And that's why we ignore the vote, which is crazy. Do you know how many people were killed, African American people, and others were killed because they sacrificed themselves in order for us to vote, and we take it lightly and not vote? It's unconscionable. So that's my spiel.
Right on. You talk about that. That was one thing I learned in the book. You give some of, as you've been saying repeatedly, the culture of the fire department, how initially there were a lot of black people who participated in fighting fires because it was obviously very dangerous work, grimy conditions, that you didn't have a lot of white people who were just stepping up to the plate when this was not something that you were paid and what have you to go out and, yeah, I'm going to volunteer and risk my life to go and put out fires and get all dirty in the city. But once this became a paid job and you got a place where you can stay and all that, then they systematically rooted black people out. And as you said a couple times, I think already, it became the so-called immigrants, white people who had recently come here, Italians and what have you, Irish, who took a lot of these positions and effectively blocked black people from becoming firefighters. You talk in the book, I think very early on, you talk about your class and coming in, and particularly that environment, that time in the 70s, after you already touched on watching firefighters come out and turn hoses on black people and seeing black people involved in so many different aspects of fighting against racism, white supremacy, not just in the U.S., but all over the planet, fighting against racism. And you talked about how that kind of influenced your thinking at that time going into becoming a firefighter in the county. I wanted to read a little bit and then to kind of get you to give us a little bit more detail on what this was like when you are going in as a recruit, lots of black males going into this environment, this culture of racism, as you said. You write, let's see, I'm going to pull up, this is one of the first anecdotes. Okay, you write, our first course in the Red Books was on ladders. Since I was in the middle of my second year of college, the lecture portion and written exams were a breeze. The practical portions, however, proved to be another story. The fire instructor for our ladder course was Lieutenant Pete Hendricks. He told us that typically there were 2 ladder drills that tested a recruit's manhood, the 12-foot wooden ladder and the pumpier ladder. He joked that most of us African-American recruits should not have a problem doing the ladder drills because of our resemblance to monkeys. I was confused and pissed off not only at the instructor that made these remarks, but also your other fellow recruits and how they didn't respond appropriately. Can you kind of talk about, was this just a one-time thing, or was this kind of an everyday onslaught of racist remarks and commentary that was made while you were going through the training process?
No, that was an everyday occurrence. I was 20 years old, didn't know the way of the world, when I first started. The class comprised of 48 members. Out of 40 members, 40 of the members were African American, 5 Hispanics, and 3 white males. So, and most of them had military background, and, I was, small and skinny, 130 pounds soaking wet. And to see this white male instructor standing up there making those comments, and I'm looking around and I'm saying, okay, these big, strong African-American, people in the room, and no one said the thing. And I'm saying, okay, what's wrong with this picture? And I was confused, because I thought, I'm from inner city. I thought maybe somebody would have jumped up and tagged him or something like that, but it didn't occur. And I got more enlightenment as I came along, because they set me aside, one of the recruits, and talked to me and said the reason they didn't do anything because that would have been what they wanted us to do, so they can get rid of us. And so I had to grow up very fast within that training period, and because it was difficult. It was difficult because my anger came back. It reminded me of civil rights workers, being spit upon, dogs and everything else like that. And they still did their job, as far as getting rid of us. Out of the 40 African Americans that was in the class, only 12 were survived. And most of them, they got rid of bad attitude or didn't walk the way they thought they should walk. We had a swagger, or we looked like we came from a pool hall. Those were the comments that were made. And the monkey drill was one of the softer comments that they made throughout. And that same day, the first day I got there, when the lead instructor talked about that as a firefighter, we will be entering into the fire station in people's homes, and we need to make sure that we take control of our body odor, because we knew that African Americans sweat a lot, so we exhibit a lot of body odor. So if we have to take 2 or 3 showers a day, we had to do it. And then he brought his white secretary in there and introduced us to her. And then he promptly asked her to leave the room. And then he said, I want y'all to stay away from that white woman. So that was a theme from the very first day.
Wow. You also write at the kind of early stages of your career with the Miami-Dade County Fire Department. The interview was conducted by 4 fire department officials. During my interview, I was asked a series of questions, several of which I felt were highly inappropriate. One of those questions was whether or not I could get along with white people. The tone in which this question was asked translated to, do you know your place around white people? I just looked straight at them with a puzzled face. At that moment, my concerns and worry changed from my ability to handle the physical challenges of the job to my ability to handle the bigotry on the job. While I calmly answered the questions, I was really wondering what kind of snake pit I was about to walk into. And I think you just shared, you said, you really were not prepared for what you were walking into, this culture of racism. And is it that did you have anybody to kind of talk to you and guide you along about how to deal with racism on the job and kind of what you might expect from this sort of environment, the appropriate thing to say or how to respond? Did you have any of that sort of training or discussions before you started your training?
Not at all, not at all. Even though I worked since I was 16 years old at a hospital, and it was, City Hospital, and I had white coworkers. I was a kid, 16 years old, when I started. But my schooling, I went to Miami Northwestern, predominantly African-American, 99% African-American high school. We come in contact with, white instructors and teachers, but it wasn't an environment where I was prepared for this. I saw stuff on TV, but when you actually face it, it's a totally different thing. Seeing it on TV and being live is totally different. And I just wasn't prepared. And, so I didn't have anybody to show me the ropes and saying, hey, this is how the situation is. But I had to grow up in fire college very fast. Some of the older recruits did pull me aside and why they do the things they do and, how they have to ignore it and look at the big picture. So it was an enlightenment for me. It was enlightenment for me.
Wow. You have continuing in that same vein. This is just when you all would have some of your lunch breaks. And as you said, there were quite a couple dozen black males who went through the training with you at this time. And you write that during our lunch talks, we discussed strategies to survive this madness. We constantly stressed the importance of ignoring the verbal abuse and the need to work together and show that African Americans would make worthy firefighters. As a group, we worked hard to perform above and beyond just passing. We went all out to prove our value. In doing so, the recruits of training class number 28 shattered all the previous drill times and physical training records. As we strove to shatter records, the training staff strove to shatter our dreams. The latter part, I think, is hugely important. That's something that I want to come back to. But just in terms of being with these other black males and kind of going through this, I think you touched on you in your early 20s, so you had worked before, but this kind of, you're still pretty young at this point, and just kind of discussing with these other folks what would be the best way to handle, the best way to respond. Did you all have like discussions, like when they are comparing us to monkeys? telling us not to look at these white women, telling us we need to take 8-10 showers a day because black people smell so bad, and all this other, just going down the list. Did you all like really plan it out? Like, this is kind of the line that we're going to draw for things that we'll ignore. And then if something does need to be responded to, like, how detailed did you get in terms of how you were going to respond to these racist sorts of comments?
Yes, we did. Well, what we talked about is ignoring it, that it was there. And, I mean, they had to really drill that into me, and, I never forget, and that still sticks in my mind, where Frank Hartley, who was had a military background, and he might have been at least 12, 15 years older than I was. But he said, listen here, young buck, because I was complaining that why they weren't doing anything and not commenting. And he just told me, said, listen here, young buck, I have, racism is all in this country. And it's very difficult for a black male to get a good job in this country. And said, this fire department is no different than any place in the United States. And he said, if he has to suck up to white racists in order to get a good job to provide for his family, he was willing to do that. Now, we did have some people that, when we say ignore, sometimes they would knock the books out some of the black recruits' arms, and dare them to say something, call them names, and see how they respond. And most of us would not respond to it, just keep going, looking the other way or ignore their comments. But, some of them, just couldn't take it anymore. And we had several that said, I can't take this crap anymore. And it said, it's unfair and it's racist to call us those type of names and do the things that you're doing. And they promptly got rid of them, saying they had a bad attitude.
With hindsight, if the same sort of thing were to happen 2014, what would your response be? Like if some young black folks, male or female, if they were going through firefighter training and said that this sort of thing had happened, something similar, either someone making a comment or knocking books out of their hands, that sort of thing, what would your suggestion be on how best to respond to that 2014?
2014, it's a totally different environment. And hopefully we have people in place where they can go to. See, Miami-Dade Fire Department, we didn't have any black officers. Everybody was new. Even the people, the Miami-Dade Fire Department, I came on in 74. They didn't even start hiring African Americans until 1972. So there was no person in power to do that. But it's totally different. You have black supervisors now where they can bring that stuff up in different venues where they will fight for you, in regards to those issues. So a lot of those things shouldn't be occurring now, and there are avenues where they can go to protest those type of things. That was one of the things when I was appointed to division chief, and I said I wanted the training division because I know that's where the change in culture started, when the people first come in there, and we had to change that culture, and I worked hard, as many other African American women departments worked hard to change that type of culture.
I want to get back to the second portion of the statement, and then later on, I think you also talk about how things kind of evolved in the fire department to where it stopped being so crude and explicit, and it started to take on a more sinister, subtle form. But I want to go back to the kind of concluding portion of that segment that I just read, where you talked about how training class 28 that you were a part of, you all worked so hard, not just to pass, but to show that you were exemplary, that you could do a phenomenal job fighting fires. That did not seem to impact the white people who were training you at all. It seemed like that they, regardless of whatever you did, how highly everyone tested, that they were still bent on getting rid of as many black firefighters as possible. And I thought that was hugely important because I've heard that from quite a few other folks. Even Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. has talked about. He said, and he grew up during the same time period, where he's a little bit older, but he was still alive in the same time period. And he said that he used to have that same opinion. He said he used to think, hey, if we just go in and work hard, if we show up on time, if we do well, show them, hey, we can excel, we can exceed in any field or what have you. We just need to be given an opportunity. White people, this culture of racism will begin to decrease and white people will be more accepting of us. And he said he was stunned when he found out that that was not the case at all. And it sounds like there was kind of a similar process for you. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's very true. It was never about us being able to do the job. We just didn't want us there. That was the bottom line. And I don't care how good we were. They target the top students to get rid of them. Mm. They probably saw them as a threat in the future as far as promotions and other job opportunities. But it would seem the more we excel, the more they put those machines in motion to get rid of us. And that was the problem. And I mean, it was frustrating. And like I'm saying, you know, out of the 40 candidates, that candidate that went was in my class. Only 12 able to survive, you know, permanent status. And it was bad attitude, or, you know, we didn't move fast enough, or we talked with an accent, you know. And I know it's hard to believe with some people, but they actually got rid of a Jamaican fellow because they said he talked with an accent. You know, he was one of us, you know, that type of thing. So those are the things that we had to deal with. They tried to fire one person who actually I promoted as my deputy director, Lee Stringer. He was a part of my class. And they said, well, the way he moved, like he moved in a pool hall. And they tried up until the last day to fire him. Not because of his grade, his performance, because he was one of the top students, but because he just didn't move right.
Wow.
That's what we did.
Context of White Supremacy. Did they also, did I read correctly, they also tried to get rid of you by accusing you of being a racist early on in your career?
Oh, well, that was in the first week of fire college. You know, they separate all the blacks and told us to report at the end of the week, report to the training captain's office. And as we walked in, we were wondering why they separate the blacks and to go in the office. So one by one, they had a letter typed out saying that we were resigning, you know. And when I walked in there, and we already told ourselves we're not going to resign, because they said, hey, you need to resign because, you know, this is probably not the type of job for you. I mean, they openly told us that. And when we walked in there, and I walked in the room, and I saw this other saying I was resigning for other job opportunities. And I said, what other job opportunity I was getting here? He said, well, you probably can get a better job. I see where you're in college and, you know, you're doing well. I'm sure you can find a great job, you know, someplace else. And I told him I wasn't going to resign from the department. And then that's when the captain looked at me, and then he said, we have where your instructor, your squad lieutenant, said he overheard you making racist comments. Overheard me making racist comments to an instructors. This is in the first week. And when I told him, I said I didn't make any of those types of comments. You know, I didn't know what they were talking about. And when he asked me again to sign, and I said I was going to resign. And he said, you know, there was no way I was going to survive in fire college. And he told me I could leave. And so those were similar comments they made to, you know, all 40 African Americans that week. None of us, you know, signed the papers.
Pitiful. I hope people keep in mind what we're hearing today. And as I said, the incident that we started the program off with, the Confederate flag on the axe, this is not, regular old white people. A lot of times we have conversations on racism. White people and non-white people will say that, oh, that racism is just, that's just old white people that are ignorant, or, they're in their 80s, they're outdated, they're about to die off anyway. These are not old white people. These are not crotchety folks that are about to die off. And these are the folks at the fire department. These are people that you're supposed to be calling on in dire straits when you need assistance, when there's emergency, when lives are on the line. These are the folks that might be answering the phone, Confederate vax, or comparing black people to monkeys. That, in my opinion, is why this problem is so serious, and why we should all really be super focused in trying to get rid of this problem as soon as possible. This is another one. Like I said, I appreciate any dialogue about workplace racism, because I feel like there's so many lessons that can be learned, and that's something that I think black people, we need to make major improvements on. You talked about kind of letting your guard down. You thinking that, there may be some white people who were not racist. Not that you said all white people are racist, but just given the culture that you experienced when you got there, and how difficult it was for you. It was a tense situation. Just the whole training process is kind of intense anyway. But you said that one of your white superiors, he had been reviewing your file. He noticed that you were a fencer. Reading on, he said, he talked about his love of the sport and how he wished that he could dedicate more time to its pursuit. As I listened to him talk, I sensed that he was regarding me as a real person and not as an inferior person. It seemed that Lieutenant Rankin was becoming more personable with me and the other members of his squad. In fact, of all the instructors, he was one of only 2 who refrained from blatantly racist behavior. So I began to let my guard down, which later proved to be a nearly fatal mistake. I was hoping you can share how this later proved to be such a major error. But before I get to that, just the significance, because I feel like I've heard that a lot of times from different non-white people. We've had, a lot of us, myself included, we've had so many just ugly experiences with either being degraded, or even if it's not necessarily a white person calling you a monkey or a nigger or something like that, but just feeling as though you are not quite as worthy as white life, how there's just something defective about you, and feeling that even if they don't say it directly, and to finally bump into a white person who seems like they value you, who seems like they're treating you as an equal. I think for a lot of it, it's such a breath of fresh air. It's just like, oh my gosh, this white person is really treating me well. Like, oh my goodness, I can relate to this white person. I'm so happy. Was that how it was for you, given the climate at this time, or am I overstating things?
Oh, no, that's exactly what it was. And I think sometimes you look for hope. You look for somebody that is different and that is fair. And I think Lieutenant Rankin was my squad leader, and he was the one that was in that when they tried to ask me to sign the paper. He was the one when the captain stated that I was overheard making racist comments about the white instructor. And when I denied it, and then he said, your lieutenant, your squad leader, Lieutenant Rankin, is the one that overheard you. And I looked at him, I was shocked. How he said, no, not you, type of, that was my thought inside of me, And I looked at him, and, it's like, my heart sunk, because, you want to believe that everyone is not that way. And I think it was more, looking back and, maturity. It was that group thing, that culture, and some of them, I'm saying some of them not blameless or racist, but because the majority was going in that direction, it was telling them, this is what we need to do, we need to get rid of them, and some of them just go along or look the other way. And I think that was the case there, where they needed those instructors, and it's pressure on them to make false allegations against us because the goal was to get rid of us because they were being forced to hire us. You know, so I think that's how it was with Lieutenant Rankin. I think it was more of his superiors and his fellow white instructors. You know, he had to follow that party line.
Still in effect today, I believe, 2014. If you are a white person, that does mean something, and there are expectations with being a member of the club with regards to how you're supposed to treat other black people, non-white people. In my opinion, I could be in error. Something you just touched on about being forced, that the fire department in Miami-Dade County, they did not openly embrace black recruits. This was something that, you know, was very contentious. There was a battle over all this. You wrote that once you passed and you actually passed all your training and became a firefighter, that there was a sense of, well, you know, this Phillips guy, he's just affirmative action. He didn't really earn it. He wasn't really qualified. You know, he just got through because we had to have some color on the fire department. Was that a sentiment that you heard a lot? And how did you feel about people talking about you as though you were not really qualified to be doing this job?
Well, you know, we had to constantly prove how worthy we were in the department anyway. But to give you an example, the fire training, we had 3 phases of probationary training. The first 6 weeks of training, and then it was a period of time where we go out in the station, you know, under probation, then we come back before the end and take another 6 weeks of training. And we did our first 6 weeks, and they got rid of quite a few African Americans. Then it came up, well, we didn't get rid of enough of them. So they extended that 6-week training period to 10 weeks. And they felt that we needed more training. Even though we shattered all the records, we needed more training. And so that was more time to get rid of more of us. And what they had told the people in the field that they plucked all these black recruits from the street, off the street, to get, you know, to go in the fire college to meet their quotas. So when I walked in the fire station, it was, okay, they got y'all off the street and said you want to be a firefighter because you're black. Okay, we'll put you in there because we're being forced to. So that was the attitude. But most of the African Americans that went through in class 28, we had at minimum almost 2 years of college, and far greater than the majority of the white firefighters on the department. You know, and sometimes I guess I was too vocal in saying that to some of them, that we had more education than they had when they came on the job. You know, so we had more than a high school diploma. So I guess that was me being young and being a little flipped too. So
I have heard that a lot too. I think that has been mentioned even in the last couple of weeks about black people having to have 50,000 more degrees and letters behind their name than white people applying for the same position, same job, who have far less qualifications, who end up being promoted and moving right on up the ladder. Before we kind of get into how you did move up the ranks at the fire department, this has come up recently on the program. We were talking about the film Roots and how black and white people responded to this film that came out in the 70s. Alex Haley wrote the book. Alex Haley, also known for writing Minister Malcolm X's autobiography. But this coming out the 70s, major event. I think it lasted for a week, kind of a TV miniseries. And I wanted to read this portion from the book and then kind of get your response, your thought on the film, and then any other details you want to share about this incident from the fire station. You write in the book, make sure I get the correct page. Okay. You write in the book, tension in the station reached its boiling point just in time for the airing of the epic TV miniseries Roots, the saga of an American family, written by Alex Haley. aired over 8 consecutive nights in January 1977, the racially charged movie had been highly anticipated and was expected to be controversial. No matter where I went or who I talked to, Roots became the topic of conversation. I had been riveted by this miniseries and definitely did not want to miss a single episode. The station's only TV was located in the common lounge and dining area. As a matter of courtesy, if someone wanted to watch a particular show in a particular time slot, it was customary to make a request in advance. At the beginning of my shift, I signed up for the 9 p.m. slot indicating Family Movie, Channel 10. I intentionally omitted the title of the movie because I didn't want to add fuel to the fire prematurely. I noticed that there were no other requests on the board. Ordinarily, Willie Brinson and I would have been the only 2 African Americans on duty, but it just so happened that my cousin Larry Brownlee from C Shift had reported early for overtime. The day had actually passed without incident, but instead of being content, I felt apprehensive. I couldn't help but view it as the calm before the storm. Shortly before 9 p.m., the other 4 firefighters left the lounge area. I should have been relieved that we were left alone, but I couldn't seem to relax. I had good reason for concern. Just as we sat down to watch the show, Lieutenant Frank, a young 5-year veteran whose reputation for racially inflammatory language preceded him, stormed in the room, followed by the other 3 men. He stepped in front of the TV and protested that he was not about to watch some nigger movie about a bunch of fucking jungle bunnies. The calm was gone, and the storm was brewing. Now was definitely not the time. It was apparent that Brinson and Brownlee had similar feelings because almost in unison we all told Frank to get from in front of the TV and shut the fuck up. We had had enough. Undeterred, Frank leaned in from where he stood and asked what we planned on doing about it if he didn't. All 3 of us stood up, and just as the argument was about to escalate to blows, the captain came into the room screaming, "What the hell is going on?" With the adrenaline pumping, everyone tried to give their side of the story at once. Lieutenant Frank claimed that we were being insubordinate and had made threats toward him. Although everyone in the room knew that was not the case, we were all surprised when Frank was not allowed to write us up. Station 2 continued to be a hostile and uncomfortable work environment for quite a while after that incident. I want to get more details on Frank, but before we do, the film Roots, we were talking about it, and folks wanted to know how people responded to that film during January 1977. Some people took the view that the film Roots, it was kind of watered down, that it was whack, it really didn't give an accurate depiction of slavery and how things operated during racism on the plantation phase. Other folks said that, hey, this, at least for that time period, that it was pretty intense, that a lot of white people were very embarrassed about all of this, that a lot of black people were very upset after seeing it. What was your review of the film at that time, 1977, January?
It was definitely the latter part. That was something we never even come close to witnessing, and watching on TV. Like I said, I was a history nut, but the way they portraying Roots on TV, man, it really got my angry. It seemed like we were angry and we were ready to fight the whole world if need be. Because we saw the abuse, on TV, how our people were enslaved and treated, where our dignity was taken away. And so, if Frank would have probably came to me and said, "Hey, hi," he probably would have been angry at him too anyway, But knowing his behavior, his attitude, and before sometimes when you ignore those racist comments, and at that point it was the wrong time for him to come in there, because we're angry about the movie and what was being portrayed in the movie. So it was the wrong time for him because we were definitely going to blows. We were going to blows. We were angry. We were striking back at the slave masters, and that's what they were. And with him coming in with that attitude and being a known racist on his previous comments that he made, we were about to have it at that point. You know, even though he was the officer and it was my unit officer was there as well, you know, we were about to come to blows. We were putting it on the line. We didn't care at that point about the job. It was about respect. He wasn't just asking for it, he was demanding it at that point.
Context of white supremacy. Lieutenant Frank, you said that he kind of had a reputation for saying things like jungle bunnies, nigger, that sort of thing. What, after this incident, did you have further flare-ups with Lieutenant Frank from either him being upset about this particular incident or just a continuation of his previous crude racist conduct?
Well, for a short period of time, you know, because he wasn't a permanent officer there on that unit. But we were being mistreated, of course, and, you know, we would take it to our superiors. They're ignored or looked the other way, and that's how it was during that period of time. And that was one of the reasons why we, you know, formed our organization, Progressive Firefighters, because we needed a voice, someone to stand up for African-American firefighters within the department. So that was, you know, those attitudes and the changes that we needed and the conversation that we needed to have within the fire department upper staff, you know, was one of the main reasons why we formed the organization. Just for the, I guess before I even include this, for the record, it was known. This was not a hidden thing amongst other white firefighters that Frank would make these sort of comments, calling fellow black coworkers jungle bunny, nigger. Was this sort of thing known, or was Lieutenant Frank doing this in secret? Oh, no. It was openly. You know, during that period of time, it was blatant. You know, we would have, you know, some firefighters were saying, hey, I don't want to work with this nigger, you know. And then, I mean, that's the environment we was in, you know. And, you know, in the book also I talk about a period of time when Brinson and I was about to have coffee in the morning, and one of the firefighters was talking about he haven't been coon hunting in a long time, you know, and he talked about and he mentioned the two-legged coons. See, now I'm 20 years old, naive, I admit, at that period of time, but I'm trying to figure out what is the two-legged coon. First, I'm thinking he's talking about raccoon, you know, and see, I didn't know they call, you know, blacks coons, you know, and when I'm trying to figure out a two-legged coon, and I was asking, what is a two-legged coon looks like, you know, and Brinson, which was about, been in the military, I think Willie is about 8 or 9 years older than I am, and he didn't say anything, you know, and nobody commented, they were just laughing. So later on, and I was asking Brinson why they were laughing, and what is a two-legged coon? He said, man, they talk about us. You know, and I asked him, I said, why didn't you mention it? He said, because he knew that I would have got in trouble, you know, confronting the firefighter based upon that. And that's why he didn't say anything, because he felt I would have got myself into trouble confronting the firefighter regarding that. You know, so those types of things they did, you know. I mean, it wasn't something isolated, you know, and I'm not saying everyone was doing it. But we had people that were openly doing those things, and they were known by the supervisor and administration that they had that type of attitude.
Just for the record, I think this is also important. Good old Lieutenant Frank, in addition to spewing all this racist vitriol, that he had a motorcycle accident where I think he broke his arm. To cover his misdeed, Frank wrote up a department accident report claiming that he injured himself when he stepped off the fire truck I think that would be at minimum fraud, if not some other infractions. It continues, this is all in the book. It was later discovered that Frank, along with several other firefighters, had been moonlighting as illegal drug dealers, a venture that was evidently quite lucrative. This same white guy, while they're sitting around calling black people jungle bunnies and niggers and all this other stuff, he's selling drugs, defrauding the fire department, which would actually be the city's the citizens of Miami-Dade County, since they're paying the bill. This is taxpayer money, defrauding them as well. Right on. Well, I guess.
Let me mention about Peter Frank. I don't know, during the, I think it was the 80s, they had the Motor Speedway where they raced through the streets and everything. Frank was the sponsor of the West Palm Beach Motorsports. So you know how rich he had to be to do that. He was the promoter of the race car in West Palm Beach. And he had these speedboats. And they eventually caught him. He went to jail for drug trafficking, you know, where they were having speedboats transporting from the Bahamas to Miami, outrunning the Coast Guard and stuff. So that's going.
But they got black people off the street. You all are supposed to be the drug dealers that they just nabbed up to come in and be firefighters. Wow. Context of White Supremacy. If there are folks who are listening in who have questions, things they would like to ask Dr. Phillips, feel free to participate. The number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943#. Press star 6 if you have a question. Number again, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943#. Press star 6 if you have a question. Moving forward, well, I guess number one, you already talked about it. You formed the Progressive Firefighters Club at first, but then association. What was the purpose for forming the organization, and can you tell us a little bit about the membership as well?
Yeah, I co-founded the organization, so it wasn't just me. And we had approximately, I think about 7 or 8 founding members of the organization. But David James and I got together, you know, and we witnessed a lot of things that were occurring. And we talked among each other. But when they tried to deny the first, almost 4 years later, when the first group of African Americans were getting eligible to take the promotion exam, when they realized that we would be eligible, it would be a large group of African Americans. When I say large, I'm talking about, you know, about 15 people. You know, to them that was too many, you know, to be supervisors. But they changed the date. They made it earlier so we wouldn't be eligible to take it. And that's when we said, okay, we need to, you know, call some other blacks to get together and talk about our strategy, what we needed to do. And we decided to make an appointment, you know, with the fire chief, Chief Bork, and discuss those issues with him. And we went down there. And our attempt was never to form an organization, it was just to address the issues. And when we, you know, one of the things we said, we wanted to go in professional, you know, act professional, suits, you know, and, you know, keep it respectful. And we went down to headquarters. We made their appointment. We went down to headquarters. They kept us waiting in the lobby for about a half hour. So, you know, it was like, we felt like being in a zoo because everybody was walking by and wanted to know why these black firefighters are out there, what they want with the chief. And so, you know, we all was nervous in anticipation of what was going to occur. So when we sat down with the fire chief and Assistant Chief Perry, the captain from the fire college, he's now Assistant Chief, in the room with us. So when we tried to explain why we were here and the issues, the director, the fire chief, wouldn't allow us. He wanted to know how many in the room had Cadillacs, because he knew black people like Cadillacs. We didn't have Cadillacs. And he said Cadillacs are good cars and stuff like that. He tried to talk about everything else about the issue. And every time he tried to bring up the issue, he would come up with various types of comments. And David James finally said, Chief, with all due respect, we have a certain amount of issues that we need to discuss with you. And he talked about, when they changed the promotional test and the way blacks were being treated. But the issue when he said about the promotional test that we would, because they changed it, a large group of blacks wouldn't be eligible to take it. Assistant Chief Perry, made the comment saying, now y'all want to be our supervisors? That was his comment right off the bat, And so Chief Bullock would never address the issue, say, hey, there's nothing you can do, and he said he'd think about the other issues. And that's basically was it. He dismissed it, And at that point, we realized that we weren't going to accomplish, anything talking with the administration. So we met back at my home, and we talked about strategy. And that's when we formed and said, well, maybe we need to get together because, and form an organization, because that's the only way you're going to have a legitimate chance to address these issues. So the purpose was to address, the discrimination and bias of African Americans within the fire service, but it was also twofold. We wanted to expose the black community to the fire department and the service that were being provided by the fire department to make sure that the fire department served the African American community as well as it served the other communities.
The membership with the Progressive Firefighters Association, about how many people, I guess you said it was kind of informal, at least at first, like how many people were participating? Were any folks, any black people, were they hesitant about participating, thinking, hey, this might upset white people further and I don't want to cause any waves?
Oh, yes. One of the, and I don't want to mention his name now, it's in the book, but one of the blacks, he was the longest tenured black on the department. He walked in the room. We were at the Elk Lodge where we were, organizing, the group. And he told us that we were going to disrupt the fire department even further, and turn off the white people that, the few that need like us. And he said, we owe them by jobs. And so, basically we had we should just try to get along with them, not form the organization, because he felt that would make the situation worse. At that point, we didn't want to hear it. And several of the members told him, get his Uncle Tom basically out of the room. He was forced to leave the meeting because they didn't want, in their words, some of their words, the House N-word to in this meeting. So a lot of things we had to deal with ourselves, and, if we get together, there's no limit. The change of discrimination that's stopping us from doing something, achieving it, is not the white man, as the saying goes. It's our own people. We have these change, and we're the only ones to free it. They can't free it. We have to free it within our heart and our having self-respect. My mother told me when one door is closed, find another door. If there's not another door open, go through the window. And that's what we have to have, that determination and focus, that the challenge is on us. No one can defeat us but ourselves. And we need to understand that and focus in regards to that. We're our own lifesavers. No one else is going to be our lifesavers.
Definitely looking for any lifesavers or assistance from white folks. Not going to hold my breath on that at all. I do see folks who dialed in who have questions. I will hit the phone lines. Again, for folks, if there's any confusion, the player should be working on the Black Talk Radio page. You can listen in there. With the page updates and everything, you do have to hit the play button. I hope that is not asking too much. Press the play button on the media player, and you should be able to hear the audio. I checked it, and it was playing fine. So just press the play button. You can refresh the page if necessary, but once you do so, there's a big black media player center of the page. Press the play button. You can listen there. If you're listening via the phone line or the flash player, that's fine as well, but it should be working. You can listen online if you prefer to listen in that way. The number one more time is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you have a question. We will hit the phone lines, see what folks would like to ask Dr. Charles U. Phillips. I believe this is a fellow caller in Florida, former firefighter himself. If you have a question for Dr. Phillips, your line should be open. Caller in Florida, did you have a question, or are you just listening? Caller in Florida. He might just be listening in. That is fine as well. We'll double back, see if he has any questions before we wrap things up. The caller at last four digits, 5640. 5640. Did you have a question for Dr. Phillips? Your line should be open.
Hi. Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening. Dr. Phillips, what is do you have a doctorate or do you have a medical degree?
No, it's just a PhD, global leadership. I was
okay.
In learning, so I pride myself on trying to be a better person, trying to be a better leader. So that's basically why I went for the PhD. Learning.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Okay, and also the last question is: are there any black female or white female fire women?
Oh yes, Miami-Dade Fire Department. We have more female firefighters than any fire department in the country. I think now they have close to about 300 female firefighters on the department. And I'm going to give you an example. New York City is the largest fire department in the country. They have approximately 13,000 firefighters. And out of those 13,000 firefighters, only 33 are female. And look at Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade, we have over 2,000 firefighters and 300. So that shows you the difference. And that's one of the things I pride myself on, being a part of the aggressive, hiring of females in the department. When I was a training instructor, I went to my director and saying, we need to do better, and I can come up and develop a program that will be inclusive of female firefighters. And I'm glad I did, because, like I said, Miami-Dade became the leaders of hiring female firefighters in the world. And throughout that process, I was even sued by fellow white firefighters in the department, suing them because I took an aggressive attitude to hire female firefighters. They didn't sue the fire chief, which is the normal process. They sued me. So that's what I had to deal with in regards to that. With black females, I promoted, when I became fire chief, I promoted several females, civilians, to management and chief positions, unheard of in Florida or in the country as well. So, I pride myself on having over 60-some% minorities in my top staff. I had the most diverse staff of any fire department in the country as fire chief.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Let's see. The person that dialed in, last 4 digits. This is our caller in Alabama. Caller in Alabama, if you had a question for Dr. Phillips, your line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Phillips. I heard a firefighter that participated in trials. I think he's Florida. He talks about, some of the racism, all the disrespect, the blatant disrespect of non-white people and firemen coming to their homes, like elderly person, they'll call them by their first name, no Mr. or no Mrs. Sometimes they'll track mud all over the folks' house, walking without wiping their feet off. And my first question would be asking you to go deeper in detail about something that you have probably witnessed white people classified as white doing when they're coming on a call to a non-white person's home. If you witnessed anything at all, I would like you to go into detail about some of the racism that you witnessed by giving the patients, even just people who are victims of fires themselves. Victims of fires are either somebody who is probably needs to be transported to the hospital. That's the first part of my question. Second part of my question would be, I know that, like when I was growing up, I used to listen to different music, and, they'll talk about, I think Slave Play had a song, 911, the Joke of Your Town, talking about how 911 police response in non-white communities were, slow. They hardly, it took their time to come. And if you witnessed anything like that with the fire department, I would probably like you to go in detail about that. And those were my only 2 questions. Thank you.
Okay. And I really encourage, people to read the book. It is CharlesUPhillips.com, because it talks about those things. That was the culture. And that was one of the things when I was talking about we have to take ownership. One of the things that when I observed when I first joined the fire department, it was eye-opening. I saw the different treatment. I saw, different communities. I didn't even know that firefighters participated in community activities until I was assigned in a white station, a white area, and how they fully enmeshed the community with the fire stations. That didn't occur in the black community. And, and I committed myself, and I told others, and that's the organization itself, we have to change that culture. And I talked about it in the book where whites would walk into a black home. It can be raining outside. They didn't, take the mud off their shoes or as they enter the home. They just walked in and tracked the home up, and they call them, not Mrs. Johnson or Mrs. Jones. They call her mama or grandmama, a discriminatory reference. They didn't think of them as an individual. But when they walk into a home, they make sure their shoes were clean prior to entering that home. And they call that patient Mr. or Mrs. And we, as a people, had to be the one that demand them treat everyone the same. And that was our focus point. And that was definitely my focus point, especially when I became an officer, when I got my crew members together. And I said, this is how we're going to treat people. Everybody be treated the same. And certain things, and we can talk about it now, it was very difficult, we protested because we didn't want to alarm the community openly. We tried to do it behind the scenes. Yes, it was receiving inferior treatment. And, you know, you think, it's only the police officer mistreating our people. Well, by me withholding medical treatment, I could have killed that individual. Or if a person having a heart attack, just by me not putting the effort or putting the proper medication treatment for that patient, you know, I didn't cause damage to that patient. And those are the things that were occurring during that period of time, you know. And we, as a black firefighters, had to step up to the plate and saying we weren't going to allow this to occur. And there were several different instances where there were openly black and white firefighters confrontation on the fire scene or on the medical scene when they witnessed and they wouldn't allow a white paramedic or a white firefighter to give different treatment, you know, to black people or no treatment at all. So we had to overcome that. And we try not to make too much of a fuss openly. We try to do it internally because we didn't want that perception that everybody was doing it and everyone wasn't doing it. But we did have, even if it's just one, that's one too many. And we had that during that period of time. That's why it was important for us to become officers regarding that. Did I answer both of your questions?
Yes, sir. The first part you answered, I especially like the part when you said that when you went to a white community, mostly white Caucasian community, you noticed how firemen participated in community activities. And but the second part of the question, have you ever noticed, did that even exist when you was in the fire department, where y'all might have got a call, but when it was in a non-white community, people took their time to come? Did that not happen? Like, as soon as y'all got the call, y'all was there? What is the whole thing about in the non-white communities? There has been a stigma on police officers and firemen and ambulance that they take their time when coming to a non-white person who called 911. Sort of like the lady at Dallas who called 911. I think it was a lapse with the operators, not the officers themselves. It could have been the officer. Gus could probably say better if you remember the story. But I mean, my line, I'll just continue to listen. But did you get the last part?
Yeah, I did. You know, it was hard. That part of the statements like that I removed from the book because I didn't want people to have this attitude that, you know, how bad it was and that it would carry over to harsh feelings. A lot of that did occur. And that's, you know, and it's so much, for example, you know, the area that I was talking about in Station 2, you know, some calls they say, well, you know, this person is probably drunk or it's not probably really a heart attack, probably a person with an upset stomach. So they more or less took their time. Or when they get to the scene and they say, well, you can have your another relative transport you to the hospital instead of the rescue squad transport to the hospital. Yes, I did witness some of those things. And we did protest it to the fire chief in other areas. But, you know, things like that is very difficult because you don't want, you know, the public and the black community to be focused and saying this one person that is an ass. You don't want it to say, you know, blanket everyone in the department that way. So it was painstaking for me to go through some of my writing to remove, even though some of those incidents occurred, some things I had to remove because I didn't want to give a general conception that everyone was like that, you know. But we did have those things, and that's why.
Basically, you said you wanted to
third of the book, you know, because I felt it was too intense, and I didn't want to give that perception, you know, how bad things were.
You wanted to keep the integrity of the fire department as a, well, everybody ain't like that. Like you said, you wanted to keep the integrity of the fire department, so you didn't want to argue with your coworkers in front of the patients, people that call for the 911 assistance. Is that what you're saying?
But
like y'all handle.
But also now, this is during that period of time. I would be very surprised because of electronic, the way we can monitor things now, that as far as responding, doing it because of the issues that happened 20 years ago. I would be very surprised that it would be occurring now. Now, I talked about it in my book, it was occurring during that period of time. And it was a period of time where blacks were receiving self-treatment, and not the same that other communities were receiving. That's not a secret, that's a fact. So I don't want to give a perception that I don't really feel that those things are occurring. I'm talking about blanketing things. You may have isolated incidents, of course, but I'm talking about in general, those things are occurring today.
I don't mean to interrupt. I'm kind of half different understanding. Are you saying that those type of incidents happened back then when you were working, but you say they don't happen now?
No, I'm not saying they don't happen now, but I don't think that's the general consensus that those things are happening on a regular basis. Because I would be surprised if it were. I'm saying now you may have isolated incidents that occur, but I was talking about what occurred in the past, in the beginning, when we start trying to change that culture of the organization itself. One of the things when I became fire chief, I made sure that each fire station was devoted to that community and had activities within that community. So those are the things, once we get in position, we can make changes. So I was speaking of what occurred during the past. Now we can monitor a truck and tell where the position of the truck itself or the unit. We can tell that now just on a monitor. So they don't have the luxury, just like the cell phone and all these other things, electronics that we have now. We can monitor things more closely. So it's more difficult to do those types of things or violate, different people's rights and stuff like that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. But I kind of, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, you can't monitor because in certain places, if you record with your cell phone, police or the firefighters, you could be arrested just for recording. So I understand what you're saying. I appreciate you answering my question, though.
Thank you.
The person that dialed in, last four digits, 4223. 4223. Did you have a question for Dr. Phillips?
Excuse me. Yes. Greetings to all the callers and to you, Gus, and to the guests. Unfortunately, I am having a little trouble understanding. The reception for you, Dr. Phillips, is very poor. I can hear you, Gus, with clarity, but unfortunately, so I may have missed. I was trying to get what you were saying about taking ownership. If you could, when you answered the previous caller's question regarding maybe some of the incidents about coming to neighborhoods, non-white neighborhoods, slowly, or them tracking mud into their houses, or being treated differently, poorly, I'll say, as opposed to white, I guess, people that were calling 911 or had emergencies, for the fire department. What do you mean when you say, or are you referring to the people taking ownership about this mistreatment or?
Oh, no, that was different. It wasn't about that. It was something else. What I was, in reference to ownership, I was saying freeing ourselves from, as an individual regarding, the changes of slavery. We can't allow them to change us. For example, like in my community in South Florida, gun violence, black on black crime. No one can come in there and solve that issue for us. We as a community have to take ownership of that and say we're going to solve this problem. We don't have to wait for the cavalry. We need to get together, mentor our kids, talk to our kids, discipline our kids, and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's what I was talking about, taking ownership. I'm not a person who says I need you to come into my house to make it right. No, I need to take ownership of my own house and make those corrections. Now, in regards to what we were talking about as far as 9/11 system, what I said in the previous caller, that, and I was making reference to, 20 years ago and during a certain period of time when the treatment of African American community was not equal. And that included medical, fire service, or regardless, when we responded to respect. I was saying that when I was a rookie, when I would go into a black home, the white officers and firefighters were walking there, mud on their shoes, wouldn't scrape the mud off their feet or brush it off, or they just walk in. They would talk to the residents or the patients. They'll call them their first name or call them a mama or grandma or something like that. And I saw a complete difference when I was in a white community where the officer talked to the patient and addressed the patient as Mr. or Mrs. They made sure they didn't drag mud throughout their home. They was courteous, in speaking to the individuals. That's the difference. And I said one of the things that as an organization, the Black Firefighters Organization that we formed, those were the items that we said we as officers, as black firefighters, as black officers need to change. We need to tell them that you can't do that. You have to treat everyone equally. And especially when I became an officer, I got all my people together and said, hey, this is how we're going to do it. You address everyone by their last name with respect. And when we start doing that, if we don't respect ourselves, no one is going to respect us. If we don't demand respect, no one is going to respect us. So those are the things that we need to do as a people. And that's why I was making reference to that. Were you able to hear me?
I was listening intently, but unfortunately it was still very muffled. I did get some of the, a little bit of a better understanding as to what you meant by taking ownership. I guess in that example of you seeing the, mistreatment of how they would treat, the non-white, people that were calling for help or assistance, you were saying that it would be more of the officers that would, take the ownership to say that they could not, this is something that you cannot do. This shouldn't be allowed. These people should be treated equally. Non-white areas, white areas, period. You're saying it should take place within the department. As far as ownership.
That, each of us should demand to be treated fairly and not just look the other way. And that's something we did. You'll go in a situation and you'll see people are being mistreated. And even if you did mistreat someone, if you look the other way, you're just as guilty. You should demand that everybody be treated the same and fairly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it was just one follow-up, Gus, and I'll be finished with. So I know in the example before you said you really didn't, I think I heard you say that you really did not want to, for lack of a better term, jeopardize the integrity of the fire department, so you really didn't speak up or, say anything about what you witnessed?
No. What I was saying is that what I said, for example, I said in my book, I took about a third of the book, because it was becoming a little lengthy, and I didn't want. I said some of the things I had to take out because I didn't want a common theme to say, hey, all these incidents occurred, and that was a general, a position or attitude within the department. I had to be very careful not to get the perception that everyone is racist, for example, and they weren't. It was a lot of that, and I put it in the book. But I didn't want to give the overall theme that was the concept. Now, when I was on the department itself, we took the battle to the department and to the county in addressing those issues. But I didn't want it to be in the paper because I don't think that was constructive, and everybody is angry from that point of view that what was occurring. So we had to, I'm talking about the black firefighters, had to work together to make those changes, correct those changes, instead of going to the public and going to the media and say, hey, they're mistreating black people all over. We wanted to actually solve the issue with constructive dialogue, and we felt that was the best approach to take because some of the things, for example, like firefighters carrying guns, on the truck during that period of time, specifically in the black community, we took those issues to the fire chief because we felt that it put everyone in danger. Now, we didn't want to let the public know what was occurring because what would have occurred in those communities, we would have had people shooting at us. So that's not constructive. We want to solve the problem and get rid of the problem and not just inflame the situation. So that's the approach that we took on some of those issues.
Well, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions. I'm going to go back and definitely listen to the archive part, so hopefully it'll sound a little bit clearer. But thank you for answering my questions, and thank you, Gus.
I'm sorry that it didn't come over as far as the voice and transmission. Sorry about that.
No need for an apology. Thank you for answering the questions.
Thank you.
My suspicion the archive will be clear. I can hear him clear. Generally, the archive is a problem if I can't hear it clearly, and I've been able to hear Dr. Phillips clearly, so my suspicion is that the archive should be A-OK for anyone who's having any difficulties with the phone connection. Our caller who dialed in, I think this is Princess out of Florida. If you had a question for Dr. Phillips, your line should be open. Princess, did you have a question, or are you just listening?
You mean Princess number 0779? That
would be you.
Oh, okay. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I had the same issue as the previous caller. I can't understand Dr. Phillips, and also I'm on my phone, which is not the greatest. And I can't get you on the actual computer. I've been trying. Lately I've been using my phone, so I don't know what's the problem.
Did you press the play button on the media player?
Yes.
And you still didn't hear anything?
No.
How strange.
I know.
I will double check. I just checked the page. I was able to hear on the page. Yeah, that is odd. I reckon you can let me know, like, your browser, or if there was anything. I guess if this is a recurring problem, which browser you're using and all that. But yeah, to try to figure out. Yeah, I'm listening to it right now on the page. It's coming through pretty clear. That is strange. At any rate, I guess if you want to go ahead and ask your question, then we can maybe troubleshoot that.
No, that was the question, because I can't understand the guest, so that's why I was calling in, so I want to be able to hear him clearly, because because I'm on my phone, and it sounds very, very muffled. I hear everyone else clear except the guest.
How interesting. I don't know, Dr. Phillips. Are you on I don't know if you're on a landline or a cell phone or speakerphone. Are you?
I'm on the landline. I hear the callers very clearly. I don't know why they're not able to hear me, but I can hear them very clear. I'm on the landline. The landline.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to mute my line, and I'm going to have to just look into the archives. I'll do my best to try to listen in as close as possible, but it's very difficult to understand what he's saying. So, but I'm going to try to continue to listen. Thank you.
Appreciate your patience.
Okay.
Hanging in.
I'm going to mute my line.
Right on. Hopefully that won't. I know definitely with the page problem, some other people had said that. I've checked it twice, and I'm able to access the content on the page. So with that, I'm not sure. I will troubleshoot. I'll see if Mr. Reed has any suggestions. I think some other people had said they had difficulties accessing the audio on the page afterwards. That I'm not sure about. I can hear with the phone. Yeah, that's a little strange too. Again, I can hear Dr. Phillips, so hopefully once the archive is done, that will be a little clearer. It'll be a little easier for folks to ascertain what he's been saying, and it won't be such a laborsome ordeal to try to figure it out. But yeah, we'll see. Other folks who dialed in, our caller, I think this should be our other retired firefighter in Florida, 2658. If you had a question for Dr. Phillips, your line should be open.
Yes, and thank you, Chief Phillips, for coming on. Your voice is muffled also from my end. But could you express for us on, I think, the last chapters of the book where you spoke about the problems that you had with I believe, the county manager and whatnot, that they kind of like forced you into a position to whereas you had to make a choice to resign from your job. Can you go over that part of the book also to the callers?
Okay. Well, my problems with the county manager, and what I said, the title of the book is Fighting More Than Fires, Race and Politics in Miami-Dade County. And I emphasize it was just as much politics as it was race. A lot of things is not just about race, but it's intertwined how they treat us. For example, like I knew I was having a problem with the county manager because when someone tells you you're not a team player, I'm a straight shooter. There are certain things I'm not going to do, period. It took me a long time to get this position, and I got it the right way, in my opinion. I didn't step over anyone. I didn't backstab anyone. I did and challenged myself to be the best I can and to try to do it the right way. I wasn't about to do anything unorthodox, illegal, or unethical. And sometimes when your other upper-level people try to get you to look the other way or to do something different that you know is wrong, and I was willing to do that. So I was a boss man. And I knew when I got to the position, I told my staff, my closest, staff members, that I knew they were going to allow me to be in this position much longer because I was the type of person that wasn't going to look the other way or do anything unethical. I'm going to treat people fair. I remember when I was told not to hire a black chief officer or management position. They told me I had too many blacks. This was in the training division. And they told me they wanted me to hire a Hispanic or a white male for the position. And those are the things, are the challenges they put in front of you. And he said, well, if I didn't follow what the group wanted, that I wasn't going to progress, up the ranks in the department. It was an easy decision for me. I wasn't about to change who I am. And of course, I hired that black manager, and that was Chief Stringer, for the position because he was the most qualified. And too many of us, and I'm talking about blacks, I call them out to, look the other way and choose not to do what is right because it's simply not expected of them to treat each other fair. We're the only group where they expect us, to be jealous of our own people and not want to see them succeed. And that's a problem with the crab and the barrel mentality. And I talk about that throughout the book. Some of the things, at least half the people I talk about in the book was my own people that tried to destroy me or disrupt, my progress throughout the organization. Jealousy is, it's tough to deal with, and even with a lot of the black fire chiefs around the country, some of them say, man, you're crazy hiring all these black and women on your staff because they're going to be upset. They don't want you to do this. I remember talking to a black chief in the South Florida department and asked him why you didn't hire any black chiefs on your staff. He said they didn't want them to. I said, you're the chief. He said, well, do you know how long I would be a chief if I did these things? And he said, I fear for you because I don't think he's going to be there much longer. And I told him that shouldn't stop us from doing what is right. If we don't hire our people, how can we expect other people to do it? So it was just in that same line. If we look at Miami-Dade County, look who they hire as director. How many strong black males do they hire in those positions? They don't want us to be strong. They want us to be selfish and weak. And the people that, I had the manager, complaints to the assistant county manager, another black male. He said, well, I was upping because, I didn't smile or laugh at his jokes. So that's what we're dealing with. Sometimes we're looking for the enemy, and the enemy is ourselves. So that was my confrontation with the manager. I wasn't about to do something unethical, illegal, and so I was tagged with the term, not a team player. And I wasn't willing to do certain things. And I don't regret none of it. And I was forced out, because I wasn't what they considered a team player. And they didn't just want to get rid of me. They wanted to take away my self-respect. And I wouldn't allow them to do it. I hope I answered your question. I think I think when people read the book, it'll give more of a detail in a scenario on what was going on. And that was my goal, to give them a story behind the door that is not seen by the public, give them that view. And that's what I tried to do in this book, to let them know how politics, how they can destroy a person's reputation just because they wouldn't do what they wanted them to do or wasn't, working on their plantation. And what was expected of a black male. We're not expected to stand up and fight and tell them no. They expect us to say, yes, master, and do what we're told to do. When we start saying that we're not going to take it anymore, this is not what we're going to do, we're going to stand up for who we are. I had no doubt who I was and what I stood for. And if it takes me losing my job to reaffirm that, I was willing to do it. That's the way my mother raised me. And she would have definitely been disappointed if I would have did something else. So I hope I answered your question.
I think you probably have, Chief, but the technology is like your voice is very muffled, and I can barely hear a lot of what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure whatever you're saying is constructive for us, but I just can't hear all of it. And
are you getting me any better now, or?
Yeah, now I hear you a lot better because I've been listening to the program all through since the beginning, and that's the best I've heard you. Is whatever you did right there, it sounded much more clearer.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I wasn't realizing that until the two callers stated that it was being muffled. So I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. I appreciate you coming on the program. Because a lot of the things that you have been talking about, I also experienced. I came on about 6 years after you did on Dade County Fire Department and retired in 2008. Appreciate you coming on. Sir.
And also, just to tell you on that, it wasn't just about the county manager. He wouldn't have been able to do it without support of the union. One of the things that he's saying that, even when those false allegations were made against me and I was cleared, he said, well, the morale of the department is bad. Well, of course, when you accuse somebody of something falsely and they clear themselves, it wasn't my fault that occurred. It was the person, or the people making false allegations. So when I'm cleared, it's, the union didn't want you back. He said he went to the union. Now, why would you go to the union? If I'm cleared, then shouldn't have been a problem with my job. But it became, the union didn't want me back. Well, the reason they want me back, because, I was a man. I was standing up for my rights, and I was running the department. I wasn't some ceremonial position. I was the fire chief. That's what it called for. I was the one that made the decision, and I stood by my decision. And I was fair with them, but I was firm. I wasn't going to let them to try to run the department like they did the previous fire chief. That's not who I am. If you make me fire chief, then I'm the leader of this organization. I'll get input from everybody, because it takes everybody, all the shareholders, to make this organization work. But I wasn't going to turn over the leadership to the union. I wasn't about to do that. I didn't work too hard to get to that position to say, okay, I'm just a ceremonial head. You run a department. That was not about me. But hopefully certain things have changed in an organization. That's my hope.
Yes, sir. Can I ask one more question?
Sure. Oh, well, I guess you can
okay.
ask me,
yes, because there are some other co-workers who I informed about the interview that were listening. Could you kind of like explain that it was the incident that took place between three non-white black male firefighters who were accused of refusing to go on calls after 9/11. And could you expound upon it as much as you can on the incident and what part that you played in it when because you were the director at the time.
Okay. At the time when 9/11 occurred, I was the interim fire chief. And we had an incident where when I came to my office, everything was lighted up and the radio stations were calling into headquarters. They were saying 3 Muslim firefighters, refusing to carry the American flag on the truck. So all hell broke loose. I received a call from the governor's office, wanted to know what we were doing. The county managers, county attorneys, everybody was calling me and saying, did I fire those people yet? Now, this was within an hour of me walking into my office. And I told them that what we would do is, because that was the first I heard of it when my PIO person informed me of what was occurring on the radio stations throughout Miami-Dade County, that we had Muslim firefighters in the department refusing to carry the flag. So I told them we would do the investigation and get back with them as soon as possible. But when we did the investigation, find out that it was a bunch of nothing. It was 3 African American firefighters. The driver didn't want the flag placed on there because it wasn't properly mounted for safety reasons. And I had the county manager and the county attorney. I informed them what was going on. They told me because of the public outcry, because actually we were getting people actually threatening to go to the station and shoot at the firefighters in the station. So that station, we had to assign police officers to that station. So what the county manager and the county attorney told me to fire them anyway. And I said, well, they didn't do anything. What they're saying. He said, well, let them fire them anyway and let them fight and use their money to get the job back. And I told him that wasn't right, and that's not the way I operate. And the county manager told me personally that, if the thing didn't work out, I wouldn't be the fire chief. He said if the public outcry reached a certain point, and I didn't do, because the county attorney said, hey, just fire him, and then you out of the clear, and just let him fight to get the job back. And I said, I couldn't do that. I don't operate that way. I'm going to always do what I feel is right. And I knew that was wrong to do. So I wasn't just in that room by myself. I had other staff members, so it's not me just telling the story that this occurred. This actually happened. Even the governor's office said, why haven't we fired those people yet? But, it's a short version, but that's basically what occurred, and I didn't fire him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did that address the issue you were asking me?
That was the question to me?
Yeah, I was wondering, did I completely address, answer your question?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right on. I don't see any more hands up. Folks had a quick question they wanted to get in before Dr. Phillips exits. You should get your hand up now. I think his line is a little clearer, so folks had a question and weren't able to hear before. I did want to ask you, being in a black male and being in a supervisor position, that's something that we've been talking about quite a bit the last 6 months, intensely so the last month or so. I think you've already touched on many black people. Their observation has been that racism, 21st century, has become a lot more subtle, and that frequently non-white people will be given a title of supervisor or some other such title to denote that they are in charge, when white people are still exerting a lot of influence and or outright just telling them what they're supposed to be doing. And frequently these black people that are in these positions, they are charged with mistreating other black people. I think you were touching on different fire chief being in that position and saying that the white people told him he's not supposed to promote any black people, not to hire too many black people because they don't want them. Other people have said their observation has been that they'll put these black people in these positions specifically to mistreat black people, to fire them outright or just make their life miserable on whatever job it is that they're working. Was this your observation the time that you were a supervisor, and just with yourself specifically? Were you ever instructed directly, indirectly, to mistreat other black people who were your subordinates? And did you engage in any of those activities, specifically mistreating any of the black people that you were charged to supervise?
No, address that question first. I wouldn't. My goal was to treat everyone fairly, white, black, blue, green, or whatever it was. So, I couldn't, and I even had black people say, now you're in power, now you can punish the people that did the stuff to you. I didn't want to do the same thing that they did because that would be wrong. I can't say what they did was wrong and turn around and do it to them, So that was never my style. But when I talked about the flag issue, when I told them, hey, it was 3 blacks. They were Muslim, But the thing is, they still wanted me to fire them, And basically, I was threatened, that was in my own best interest to do it because my job was on the line. I mean, openly. It wasn't done in no secret, no one-on-one. I had a few of my staff members, in the conversation. When the manager, with the county attorney is supposed to make sure all county employees are treated fairly. He was a part of that conversation, and he made it say, go ahead and fire him, let him get the job back. See, now, if it was a reverse situation, it was white firefighters, he wouldn't have said, go ahead and fire him, let them try to fight to get their job back. See, that's the racism portion, and they expect us to just do what we're told, like we're on a plantation. And you'll see and that happens so often, where they do put blacks in a position of power, but they're not the ones that pull in the string. And some of them are just content, to follow what they're being told because they don't want their jobs jeopardized, And they're just lucky or feel, hey, I got this job, they're paying me. If they tell me to do this, I do it, Too many of us have that attitude. And I know, like I said, that was the incident personally they told me to do that I refused to do. And I'm sure it happens all over, and you'll be surprised that some of them are actually doing it. Some of them may say, well, I don't want a black in this position. I want you to hire such and such. Whether the black is the most qualified or not. I want you to hire that. They get you to do that. In my early career as a division chief attorney of training, I was told to do that, and I didn't do it. And then I was marked as not being a team player. And they told me that I wouldn't progress through. I was up for assistant chief position. I didn't get that chief position. And the fire chief told me directly, saying I promote this person who I know won't do a damn thing. And the person is weak, just to not promote me if I didn't follow their party line. It was heartbreaking for me because I worked my butt off to be in that position. But I refused, to be that type of person. That's not who I am. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised to do what's right and treat everybody fairly. And hopefully, I did it to the best of my ability.
Do you think your tenure as the first black fire chief of Miami-Dade County, do you think you would have had a relatively easier time if you had complied, went along with what they said, fired these 3 black males over the flag issue, not hired or promoted so many black people, so many females? Do you think you would have had an easier time and not been forced to?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. I probably would still be there now if I wanted to be. if I just carried a part of the line and ignored everything and just did what they wanted to do, or follow what the union wanted me to do, or what the county manager or the mayor, and just, and not think about whether it's right or wrong and just do it. No. Look at some of these people that you see around at these long tenure, and look at, and I'm not criticizing all of them, but, and you say, boy, this person always smiling, always laughing, and, then you say, well, what did he do? Look at the people surrounding him. Why there are no black staff members or black people in position to move up when he leaves? Well, that was done on purpose. That was done by design. You in there just to have that title of black man with no power, just a ceremonial position. And sometimes they expect all of us to be the same way. It took the manager off guard when I told him, that's not the way I operate. If I'm the fire chief, then I'm going to be the fire chief. If it's my decision to make, I'm going to do what is best I feel for the organization. So I knew my time was limited, in regards to that.
I think Mr. Fuller, he was talking about that. He said if you are a black person and you get one of those titles, supervisor or some other such position of authority, and you decide you do not want to go along with what white people have laid out with regards to you're supposed to be mistreating black people, firing black people, not promoting or hiring more black people than they want, you decide that you do not want to go along with that. His advice was to go ahead and keep your resume updated, to not think that you're going to be hanging out in that position too long, which for me just further underscores who really is in charge, running what's going down, regardless of whatever the title might say. I guess I had two others. With number one, with this sort of environment, you said that you were passed over for a position because you were not going along with what white people wanted, and they in fact promoted someone who was not as qualified as you were. Was there an atmosphere of mistrust promoted amongst white people, where black people ended up looking at other black people with suspicion and thinking, oh, well, this person might get promoted over me and they don't deserve it, or if this person is promoted, then they're going to be doing what white people want and mistreating us? Did that sort of atmosphere exist?
Yeah, to a large degree. It's not that, and one of the things I put in the book that, yes, I I'm proud of my accomplishment, my qualification, what I achieved. And it's not that criticizing somebody else and saying they're not qualified. It's just at a certain level you do certain things, and they want certain type of people. And sometimes we have to make that decision, because in this country, in general, we think, who calling the shots in the party? Look how you got a small group of Tea Party members. They're running the Republican Party. And that's how just take your community. It's not just the county manager and the mayor. It's those people that are funding those campaigns. They're calling the shots as well. It's a group of business people that we have no idea who it is. They're calling the shots and saying what they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow. And those people can't fathom that. And that's why you got to get blessed by certain people within the community in order to move up. And if your character, is not conducive of that, you're gone. And they're only going to allow, and I'm talking about, and I only can talk about Miami-Dade County and the makeup of our community. Our power is very limited, and even when you see the commissioners, the black commissioners or whatever, who's behind them? Who's the lobbyists behind them pushing their agenda? And why they don't stand up for certain things. Well, they have their agenda. They tell them, who they want in that position. And when they see and say, why we don't have blacks in this position or that position, they're not addressing those issues because they're told not to go there, And too many of us, look the other way because all we're looking out for ourselves and not for others. We don't say, hey, I got here from somebody else's back. Now it's time for me to reach down and pull somebody else up. Well, if they tell you they don't want that type of individual, and this is the type of individual they want, so you have a result. We have very few black males. I think in Miami-Dade County, we may only have about 2 black male directors, and Dade County is the largest, county, as far as people and everything, in Florida. Black male directors. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't support black females. We should. But they feel more comfortable and less threatened by certain individuals. And that's who they push up in their agenda. In certain jobs, they're not going to have. I'll be very surprised if I see another black fire chief within Miami-Dade. It's possible, but I would be very surprised. And definitely not a strong-willed individual. And when I say strong-willed, I'm not talking about somebody that's arrogant and just going to do his own way. I'm talking about somebody who will stand up for what he believes in. And somebody find that's too arrogant. Someone else, if a Hispanic male or white male, is a strong leader, they praise that. If you have what they call a black strong leader, well, he's a little uppity or arrogant, I had no illusion that I could go in there and do the same thing as a white male or Hispanic male, because I didn't have that type of support or, strong leadership, backup within the community. It's not there. But I made it my job. I said, I didn't go in there for a long tenure. I went in there to make changes, to help change that culture and do what is right. So I expected to be fired. I didn't expect to be fired that soon, but I expected to be fired. But it didn't stop me from having a diverse staff, hiring the highest-ranking black female in the state of Florida, hiring the first Haitian American chief in the country. It didn't stop me from doing it because I know it was the right thing to do.
I think, do you think for a lot of these folks who, black people who are given these titles of supervisor or chief or whatever it happens to be, and they do what white people tell them to do with regards to not hiring black people or firing black people, whatever, mistreating other black people, do you think that these folks, they've seen what can happen to someone like yourself who does not go along with the package, and I do not want to be fired and kicked out and mistreated, have my name sullied in the manner that Dr. Phillips and all the stuff that he had to deal with, and have Carl Ross at the Miami Herald talking bad about me and writing articles about me and being accused of all this stuff left, right, and center. Do you think that for a lot of these black folks, they see that and just say, hey, man, this is way too much to deal with. I'm just going to do what these white people tell me and be quiet, as opposed to going through all that and being fired and charged and accused left and right every day?
I think, they would have to be thinking about that sometimes and say, hey, is it worth it for me to lose my job or my family? That's, into each his own. I don't judge them. I'm just saying, you have to decide what you want to do. See, my makeup is not like that. My mother raised me. When I said that, and I had mother and father, but I said my mother raised me to do that, to be aggressive and do what's right, to stand up in spite of those things. And she would be embarrassed of me if I did it a different way. And that's who I am, So, I'm not prejudging anybody else. Yes, it occurs all the time because they don't want you to do certain things. And if you're weak, and I'm not just saying just because you're weak, but, you may feel that your family is your priority and this is the way you operate. Well, I'm not judging it. I'm just saying what me as an individual, would do. And that's how, I wanted to live my life. See, even when, I was forced out, and it was hard because I left a job that I loved and grew up in. I started in the department at 20 years old. That was my family. That's my second family. So it's hard leaving that organization, but I left it standing up, and I left it not, give way, to some unethical reason, I did it my way. I did it standing up, and I left with integrity, and that's the way I wanted. So, and I look back and I said, that's who I am, and, I'm proud the way I operated within that organization. Whether they want to believe it or not, I left that legacy. I was a part of changing that culture of that organization and making those changes. When I look at the department today, and they still have more females than any department in the country, I look back on that and say, I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of it. I'm proud that I had over 60% of my staff was diverse, the most diversified staff in the country. And I did it all, not by myself. I brought everyone in and worked together. And that's what it was all about. So I have no regrets regarding that.
What is your view? I've heard some folks, their suggestion is that since this is a strategy that racists are using to have black people in these positions where they're given a title of supervisor or whatever the case may be, chief, and they're just going to be there to carry out racist duties, racist initiatives, whether it's not hiring black people, firing black people, mistreating black non-white people, that the constructive thing to do would be for black people to not take any of these supervisor positions where they're going to be supervising and mistreating other black people. What is your view on that suggestion?
Well, I would hope that, and I know that those things occur, that is not, the majority. I'm sure they intend sometimes, and I'm not blanking that, I'm saying sometimes they do these things, where they may hire somebody because they expect them to ignore or not hire or do what they're told. And I hope the vast majority of us, and this is my hope, that we refuse to accept those type of demands. Now, of course, you're not going to probably be in your tenure much longer, but you have to stand up for, somebody got to do it, and if enough of us start rejecting, what they try to get us to do, then that will change that culture. Just like the civil rights, when they marched, they went into those restaurants when people refused to serve them. They kept going back and doing it. And they took that abuse because they knew that was the right thing to do and that, it would benefit their kids and others in the future. And we have to take that attitude as well. It's up to us to make those changes within ourselves. And that's what I was talking about, taking self-ownership. And, I always like this is Bob Marley. I think Bob Marley was a visionary. And if you listen to his music and his thought process, what he's saying during that period of time, he projecting what was happening in the future. And that's why I was saying it's up to us to free those change that is around us. We can do it, by saying, no, this is what I'm going to do. We have to free our minds from this chain of slavery. And that's what we're still slaves. And we just don't know it. We don't call it that term. But we're still slaves in this country until we free our minds and start saying, I'm the captain of my ship. I choose the destiny and the direction that I want to go. Until we actually do that, we're still going to be slaves in this country. We're slaves and just don't know it.
The system of racism, white supremacy, absolutely, is slavery worldwide. I totally agree. And I guess the only caveat I would add in with regards to the civil rights movement, what's called the civil rights movement, and the folks who participated, and the different sit-in movements, the Wilmington 10 you talked about in your book, that was not most black people. That was a very small segment of black people who were doing those things. Most of the black people were either fearful, didn't even think that was something that should be done, or just, hey, this is too dangerous. I'm not trying to be a part of the freedom rides. I'm not trying to go to these lunch counters. I'm not trying to confront these folks and get shot down by water hoses and bit by dogs and or killed, jailed, or any of the other horrific things that black people endure. But that was by far not most black people who did that. That was,
oh yeah, you hit it on the head. You know, we don't want to tell everybody that, but that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it was. You know, and it's like, okay, I want you to make that sacrifice, but you can do it. You can put yourself out there, but you know, I got to stay home in the comfort, you know, of my surroundings and let someone else do the dirty work or make the sacrifice. That's what happened with the fire department. When I talked about, blacks organizing, we had some of them in the background. They would say, hey, y'all got to do this, y'all got to do that. But they weren't there. You know, their car wasn't being damaged, or they wasn't being threatened, you know. I mean, that was tough. You're talking about a young person going through the department, and you got people threatening to kill you. You know, and I wasn't sure whether these people were going to actually kill me or not. I didn't know. Maybe I was too stupid to understand that too, you know. But yeah, I wasn't sure whether they would actually go through and try to kill me. They had it in a station down south. They had this is in a fire station. This is during the 90s, where they had a cutout picture of me with it was three of us, with a rope around our neck in the back of the fire station. You know, I mean, that's what we had to do. When I became fire chief, I was receiving threats that they was going to kill me if I became the fire chief. We're talking about, 2001. This is not years ago. This is not ancient civil rights time. This was 2001, where I was threatened. When they picked up those 3 firefighters in a restaurant, you know, threatened to sabotage me. And I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know whether they were going to go after my family or not. Those things happened 2001. And we tend to think that, it was, 50, 60 years ago. For me, it wasn't. And you think people's attitudes have changed? You know, deep down, some of those attitudes are still there. They're just doing it a different way. You know, discrimination and racism is racism. Whether they change their strategy and find new ways, like technology change, ways to discriminate and do things, bad things to people have changed as well. The strategy has changed. And we better wake up and understand that. Because somebody doesn't call us the N-word in front of our face, you don't think they're calling us by their action and what they're doing behind the scenes? You know, our problem with our youth is they don't understand their history. How can you understand your history and act the way you act today? And that's our fault. We should raise our kids to understand our history. And that's why, you know, I always talk about how the Jews talked about, you know, never forget. It's not saying, hey, keep going back to the Holocaust. It said this crap is not going to happen again, and we're going to ensure that. We're going to teach our kids and understand, so they're going to be on the lookout and make sure those things don't happen again. And that's what we need to do with our people. They need to know where they come from. Do you realize that in the 20s and 30s, we had a black middle class, we had a vibrant black community? That was happening all over this country. We were striving and being successful in spite of the crap they were doing to us. But what happened? After the 50s, Somehow we lost our will to support our own family, to be head of our own family. We left that job to other people, and that's destroyed the black community. We need to break those chains, because if we don't, that cycle will continue. I probably went off to a different subject. I apologize for that.
No
but,
problem.
That's one of the things when I go to mentoring kids, I always talk about them. They have to understand the history to understand where they're headed to. Because if you don't understand your history, you don't know the direction and don't know where to go. That's the first thing you have to do, understand that history.
No apologies necessary. Definitely understanding the history of racism, white supremacy in this area and things we've done to combat it. Definitely, I think that is super important. I think a lot of our guests and even folks who have not been guests, I think a lot of them have talked about the importance of that as well, just passing that information on. Hopefully, this broadcast, folks who've written books like yourself, part of correcting that error. Folks can check if you are interested in getting the book. The web address is charlesuphillips.com. The address again, charlesuphillips.com. Fighting More Than Fires. You can check it out and get more information about the book. Purchase a copy. Leave a message if you have any comments about the broadcast or the book, or just if you want to get in touch with Dr. Phillips. Real pleasure to have you on the program. Apologize, there were some tech issues getting started, and then with the phone, I'm not sure what happened, but it looks like it cleared up at the end. And again, my suspicion, at least with the archives, I think people will be able to hear the interview without too much trouble. I was able to hear your responses even before whatever you were able to do to clear things up a little bit towards the end there. I think people listening to the archives, I think they'll be okay. So hopefully, folks with a little patience will be all right. And this will be hopefully some constructive information about the fire department, racism, white supremacy in general, and why this problem is so serious, something that we really want to make sure that we are dedicating our time, maximum time, energy, currency towards solving this problem as soon as possible. Dr. Phillips, we really appreciate you sharing a bit of your Wednesday evening with us, discussing your book, your time as first black chief of the Miami-Dade County Fire Department. Really enjoyed hearing from you, sir.
And I thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And thank the audience as well.
Absolutely. Continue your much-needed efforts, mentoring, and wish you the best with promoting the book, getting out there. We definitely will be in touch and keeping an eye on what you're doing down in South Florida, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Have a great evening, Dr. Phillips.
You too. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye. Context of White Supremacy. We will be back tomorrow. White woman. Hopefully we will have no tech issues. The server hopefully will be up and rolling. I will contact Mr. Reed about the Black Talk page, why some folks were having difficulties in being able to listen from the page. I'm not sure what that could have been, but we'll definitely double check on that. As I checked several times during the broadcast, and I was able to access the audio content from the Black Talk radio page, so I'm not sure, but I'll definitely troubleshoot with Mr. Reed, see if he has any suggestions. And I also submitted a request to see if we could get the player back the way that it was, so that it will just start playing when you go to the page. That way you don't have to press the play button or anything. If we're broadcasting, when you go to the page, it will just, the audio will begin playing. I submitted a request to see if we could get that back as well. Hopefully that will make it a little easier for folks to tune in to the broadcast. Our guest for tomorrow will be the same program time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Dr. Brenda Juarez. If you all were listening last Thursday when we had Dr. Darren Smith on the program, black male, he was formerly married to a white woman. They have 2 daughters. I think I asked him, did he know any white people who have rooted out their own racism? And he named 2 white people. One of them was Dr. Brenda Juarez. He said she's moved to New York. She cut off contact with her white family members, denounced them as racist. has immersed herself in black people. I think he said she's exclusively having sexual intercourse with other black people. I don't think he designated male or female. He said, I think I asked him if she had experienced any trauma at the hands of other white people, and he said yes. I also asked if she was overweight. He said yes. We'll definitely be looking forward to hearing from her tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope the audio is clear. Definitely have a high regard for clarity. So hopefully that'll be back in effect tomorrow. Always enjoy having white people on the program, as they are the problem. My final note, I would hang out, but it's just this was an ordeal of a broadcast from beginning to end. Getting it started, the clarity issues, and the page not working. This was not an enjoyable broadcast for Gus, but labored through it nonetheless. For folks on the archives, it'll probably be a bit more tolerable for you all for many reasons. But at any rate, one note that I would dig out from all of this, pretty frequently I hear people when they make an assessment and they are looking at the problem and saying, well, the black people that respond, the victims of racism, period, who respond and they don't respond in a way that we think is adequate or best, and saying, well, you're going along with the racists, and if more of us didn't do that, we could solve this problem. That is true. If more non-white people resisted, didn't go along with white people, hey, that definitely would hasten an end to this problem. In my opinion, that just further emphasizes how powerful this system is and just how dominant whites are, that more of us don't resist. You didn't have droves of, I think the Boondocks, they joke about that all the time. You didn't have droves. It wasn't every single black person wasn't out there participating at the March on Washington or in the Woolworth when they did the student sit-ins in North Carolina, or in Birmingham out on the street with Bull Connor shooting water hoses on them, or joining the Black Panther Party wherever they happened to be. That wasn't every black person. That was a very small number of black people who were doing that. Most of the black people, they would have been the ones that we would be saying, hey, y'all on the sidelines. Y'all are the reason that this isn't going faster. Why aren't you out there getting down? And they had a lot of the same, in my view, logical responses, because I have a mortgage, because I have offspring that I'm trying to take care of, because I have a car note, because I'm trying to get my child through college, or I don't want to have my head bashed in by some racist enforcement officer. I don't want to be bit by some racist trained dog. I don't want to have a water hose shoot me down the street. I don't want to be shot and killed, and all the other atrocities that happened to those black people who stepped out there. That was not most black people. And I would say that's not just something that applies to black people. That is across the board. Most of the time, I think even they said with the Tea Party and the people that, white people I'm talking about, who were pushing for a war with white people in what they call Britain, that created the Revolutionary War. That was not most white people. Most of the white people were cool. They wanted to hang out and stick as a part of the British Empire. That was a small number of white people who were pushing for that. Even if you want to go more contemporary, even World War II, most white people did not go fight in World War II. When they talk about the greatest generation, that was not most white people. They were not storming the beaches in Normandy. They were not a part of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was not most white people. That was a small percentage of white people who went and actually fought and risked their lives or died or whatever the case may be. And that's generally the way it is. It's not most people. And I would say specifically with racism, white supremacy, I mean, hey, that, if anything, should just magnify. White people are dominating. They have a system set up where they know it is unlikely that most of the victims of racism, it's unlikely, as this system is running currently, that they are going to be willing to sacrifice enough to jeopardize this system, whether it's their life, whether it's their career, academic career, business career, whatever the case may be. The way we have things set up right now, they know with mathematical certainty most victims of racism are not going to be willing to sacrifice enough to jeopardize our current empire. They know this. I take the position, I don't think we really gain anything by looking at other non-white people and blaming them for this. I take the position that, hey, we should acknowledge that's what this system is designed to produce. And if anything, the people that are willing to sacrifice, I take the position you should be doing more. If you have that courage, if you're willing to step up and step out there, you're willing to put your life on the line, you're willing to put your career on the line, you're willing to put whatever, your finances on the line, get to it. Get to it. Get to it. Just doing that alone, in my opinion, and I think the evidence has shown, just doing that alone, it tends to inspire other people. If they're victims of racism and they think what you're doing is correct, you're making an effort to stand up to racist white supremacists, I think the evidence shows it does tend to inspire other people to follow. Maybe not droves, but it does tend to inspire people. And it might not even be during your lifetime. It might be once you are no longer with us, that other people will see what you did and say, hey, I have been inspired. I hear that all the time. People mentioning victims of racism who did make that effort and who were willing to sacrifice. Harriet Tubman, Fannie Lou Hamer, Minister Malcolm, Henry Highland Garnett, whomever you want to name, pick somebody. David Walker, Rosa Parks, pick somebody. It does tend to inspire. So that would just be my view. I know everybody doesn't agree with that, but I just think, I just don't see where we gain anything from beating up on other victims of racism for how they respond to an awesome system of terrorism. I think we name all these examples, the water hoses and dogs and fire beatings and everything else that they've done to us, which is terrorism. That's what it is. It's terrorism. And then we, in my opinion, it is amazing how we forget, oh, this is a victim who is responding to terrorism. That's how I would expect someone to respond, with a lot of fear. Fear of losing their life, fear of losing their job. They've been terrorized. I would expect them to respond in that manner. I think that's just something I would encourage us to keep in mind. If we're saying racism is terrorism, when you're looking at thinking about another non-white person, including yourself, you're talking about someone who is responding to terrorism. Master terrorism, not just some rinky-dink outfit, but massive, global, systemic terrorism. I would argue the greatest system of terrorism that the world has ever known. I think that should be kept in mind. I think I say pretty consistently we should have a great deal of patience with other victims of racism. Hopefully that will help. I certainly know everyone doesn't take that position, and that is cool in the gang too. But I would just, again, if you can show me what should be done with these people that you don't think are responding adequately, and where is the payoff? Where does it benefit black people, victims of racism, to call out other non-white people that you don't think are responding appropriately? You don't think they are demonstrating enough courage to get out and do whatever you think needs to be done? Where has that benefited us? That's all I would ask. What should be done with them? Where has that benefited us, focusing on them? We will wrap there. Tomorrow, white woman on the program. Always love having white people here because they are the problem. Have questions ready. Hopefully we will be clear so people won't have any issues listening on the Black Talk Radio page, calling in, or just clarity in general. Hopefully her phone line or what have you will be straight and we'll be ready to ride. Don't forget to tune in for the book study session this Friday. Madiba, Long Walk to Freedom. This is number 6. We're still very early in the book, so you can feel free. Listen to the archives, catch up, make sure you're ready to roll for this Friday. I'm looking forward to digging back in the book. That also has been, I would even say that book is quite applicable to what I was addressing in the previous 5 minutes or so. Thanks for joining in. Invest if you think the program is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal is in the top right. Listener supported counter-racist radio. Dr. Cambon, he emailed me today. He said, make sure you tell your listeners, I said, take some of their coins that they would be using to buy their jumbo televisions and iPhone gadgets. Set that aside. Invest in the cows. You can tell them that I said that. KamalCambon.org. Thanks for tuning in. I hope it was constructive, and for folks who had a difficult time either listening on the Black Talk page or calling in or just with the clarity of Dr. Phillips, thank you for your patience. Hopefully that will be rectified. Tomorrow it seemed like there were a variety of issues today. So we will persevere, and hopefully things will be much, much clearer for mañana. Creator, give us the strength to persevere. Remind us to be patient with other victims of white terrorism. Remind us to be patient with ourselves. Help us to remember that if racism, white supremacy is white terrorism, all non-white people are victims of terrorism, and we should expect them to act accordingly. Give us the courage, determination, the fortitude to decrease our fear bit by bit each day to do what needs to be done to permanently resolve the problem, white people. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. Context of White Supremacy. Signing out. Ashe. Thanks all for tuning in.
I'm a victim, brother.
No problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.